Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's kind of warm. Let me take this off. How are you guys doing? Alhamdulillah, bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. I'm so happy to start the sessions of TDC. I miss the conference, I miss this place, and I would like to, in the beginning, to extend my thank and my dua, my prayer for Brother Haytham and all his team, for all the brothers and sisters who've been working hard to put this together. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you and make this and your skills on the Day of Judgment as a hasanat. And also would like to thank you all for coming back to Texas Dawah Convention. And I'm very impressed by the program, by the focus of the program, something that I really appreciate. I have a flight at 1 p.m. and you can imagine, flights today will be a quite challenge. That's why I would like to make my talk shorter than usual. In this subject, Islam and terrorism, is a big subject. There's many areas we can address this subject from. But in the light of what happened last week and been happening for the last few years, I think this subject is sticking around and is not going anywhere. And I think it's so important for us as Muslims to address it and put it in the right frame, and instead of somebody else putting the framework for the relationship between terrorism and Islam or Muslims. Let me start with this. You guys know the difference between terrorist and extremist? Do you guys know the difference between a terrorist and extremist? Anybody knows? Anybody can get a guess? A terrorist, when a Muslim attack or kill someone. An extremist, when a non-Muslim attack and kill someone. That's how it's framed in the media. In the media, always terrorists connected to a Muslim making an act of violence, targeting civilians. Extremists, always we hear in the media, related to someone who is not a Muslim. But that's in the media. But in the court, the public court, terrorism has to do with promoting your ideology through violence. Basically, you have a certain ideology, you want to promote it by using violence to force people to accept, to adhere to your ideology. This is how they define terrorism. I mean, that's the simple definition. If you look at the United Nations websites trying to define terrorism, you will find 200 different definitions from all around the world. But I think that's what most people agreed upon, and that what our security agencies in the United States basically accept. While extreme views, radical views, are not something illegal, technically speaking, there's not illegal. You might have an extreme views, but that doesn't make you a terrorist. Radical views, but that wouldn't make you a terrorist. It may make you an extremist, makes a radical person, but it doesn't make you in trouble with the law. That was basically our Constitution saying here in the United States. And that's what not supposed to be the interest of security agencies, unless this radical polarization or radical views or extreme views kind of giving a hint about taking this action to the next step, which is basically to do something about it. So here I want to focus on terrorism. So I'm not going to focus on the violence radical, the radical lead to violence, the violence extremism. This is what I would like to talk or make a few points about it this morning. Number one, I would like to say that terrorism is not part of Islam, but it does exist among Muslims. Islam does not support terrorism. Islam doesn't accept the concept of al-ifsad fil ard, al-tughyan, al-dhulm. These three words commonly used in the Quran, referring to transgressions, referring to basically exceeding the line or crossing the lines or violating somebody else's rights or terrifying people, spreading corruptions on earth. All these things are forbidden in Islam, and there is a plenty of verses in the Quran and ahadith in Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam to forbid such thing. So this is in Islam, this kind of action, like killing an ambassador, for example, like what we heard last week, even if the ambassador of a country like Russia, who clearly supporting or killing Muslims in Syria, will not justify killing an ambassador, because ambassadors are protected. There is a consensus, and I will say this one more time, a consensus agreed upon between all Muslim scholars that ambassadors today take the same rules of what we call them in our traditions, books of fiqh, in the old days, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, in the time of the companions, they call them what? Al-Rusul, Al-Burd, the messengers, the one who come represent the other side in negotiation, or basically carrying a message from another country to the Muslim country at that time, or the Khalifa at that time, or Rasulullah ﷺ in that case. That person who carried that message, it is clearly stated by the Prophet ﷺ that we don't kill messengers. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu stated that. And that's something agreed upon between all Muslim scholars in the old days until today, that messengers or representatives of countries, or basically peacemaker, if you want to call them as well, those people will not be attacked. When a man came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he was an ambassador for the people of Quraysh. He liked the Prophet, and he said, I want to be Muslim. And Nabi ﷺ said, go back to Mecca. And when you go back to Mecca, to your people who sent you to me, and you still feel the same way about Islam and about me, come back. لكي لا يقال إن محمد يحبس البرد أو يحبس الرسل. So it will not be said that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam take the messenger, or in this case we call him ambassador, a hostage, or he will basically arrest them, put them in jail. That's unacceptable. That's not correct. So ambassadors take the same rule. So even if there is, imagine a scenario where there is a war between the Muslim country in that time, in the time of the Abbasi, the Umayyi, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Umar, like the ambassador came from Persian, and that's an act of war between the Umar al-Khattab and the Persian. He wouldn't kill their ambassador. He wouldn't arrest their ambassador. He wouldn't touch their ambassador. That's something so clear. So that's why when someone killed that ambassador in the name of jihad, in the name of Islam, in the name of promoting ideology, that's no doubt this act, it's an act of terrorism, and it is an act of a forbidden act in Islam. Same thing if someone would go and kill people in the street of Berlin or anywhere in the world, or in Riyadh, will go and blow up a masjid in Saudi Arabia. If we go to Iraq and blow up a Shia masjid, for example, we ask what's the motive behind that? If the motive behind that is to promote ideology, is to basically think that this is a religious duty, should be carried out, in this case, this is an act of terrorism. And we should, as Muslim community, we don't argue about that, in my opinion. And we should be very clear, standing very clear, if this is the case, and we know that this is what happened for that reason, we all should be line up and condemning this act. Because it's in Islam forbidden, it is in Islam not allowed, it will not bring any good to the world. You think Russia will pull out? You think the European and America change their course of actions because of these terrorist acts? That's one of the things that they always tell these extremist jihadi groups. I always ask them, tell me what the Muslim world benefited from your actions. Just give me one advantage we got. Just ask yourself, anyone in the fringe of maybe somehow thinking about that idea, of giving it a shot kind of, just ask yourself, what good they brought to the Ummah? Nothing but evil. Nothing but escalating. More 50% of the victims of terrorist attack that take place in the world, the victims of these attacks are children, believe it or not. Most of them are non-Muslims. That's why when we see these racist people coming on the news and saying to us that, Islam is the one who's suffering the most from terrorists. And Muslims are the one who's suffering the most from terrorists. Not anyone else, not more than any other nation, more than any other religious group in the world. So here, this is something always keep in mind, that this act, we should not have buts, we should not have hesitation, we should not have at all any doubt about how forbidden, how evil these actions are. No matter how you try to cover it with the word jihad, with the word amr al-ma'ruf and nahy al-munkar, you want to say revenge, you want to say waking up the ummah, all this talk the Khawarij used in the old days. The Khawarij, which the Prophet ﷺ said they are the worst sect in Islam. They are the worst people under the shade of the sun. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said. قال هم شر قتل تحت أديم السماء. لئن أدركتهم لأقتلنهم قتل عاد وثمود. Guess what? Those people used to say as well that this is jihad, this is for the sake of Allah, this is, amr al-ma'ruf. They used to say all these beautiful words, but they deceive people. The second point that I want to mention today, I always ask myself, I'm sure that these guys who plan these attacks, not idiots, not stupid, what do they want to achieve? That's right. I always ask myself, what do you want to achieve? They know that by attacking Berlin or Paris, that's not going to change the foreign policy of Europe. I think they know that, they get that. Is that the goal really, to make a pressure to change their position towards Palestine, towards Syria? Is that really the goal? You know what, I always have this question in my mind. When they did 9/11, do you think that they meant by attacking America this way is to change American foreign policy? Did they really think that this is how it will work? You know what? This has been for me a long struggle, thinking, well, how do they think? Until the so-called Khalifa of ISIS or Daesh came and made his first speech. And he said, you know what? I said, I got it. Now I understand how those people think. And it is so important for you to know how they think. He said in his first khutbah that the goal of this movement is to eliminate the gray area in the world. Pay attention to this. What's eliminating the gray area means? Basically, their goal is not to change the policy of America or whatever. No. Their goal is to split the world into two camps. These two camps, Muslims, non-Muslims. And these two camps in a state of war. You, in the gray area in the middle, you have to make a choice. Either to join their camp and to be a Muslim, or to join that camp and to be a non-Muslims. But those people who are like many Muslims stay in the middle. Many Christians, many Jews, many Hindus, many Sikhs, many atheists, they are in the gray. They said, you know what, we don't want to fight you, we don't want to fight you. We want to stay like human beings. We can coexist. We can live in peace together. We can live in harmony. We don't believe that our existence means eliminating or suppressing the other group or the other camp. We believe in multicultural, in pluralism. We don't need to polarize the community to two camps only. Their goal is to push those people in the middle farther to the fringe. That's the ultimate goal. So how you do that? You put pressure by all these attacks so that an average American, the average American who's not racist, who have no biased opinion about Islam, what will do? Will start be pushing away. You know, one incident after another, one incident after another. So you say, you know what? Maybe those people are bad and they deserve to be attacked. You know, that's why you see the rise of the right wing. Something pleases those groups so much. They love to see Islamophobe rising. Because the more Islamophobe rise, the more you push the Muslim toward extremists, and the more you push the non-Muslim toward the other extreme group. And that's why the world became in chaos. And they believe that at that point, when you basically split the whole world to completely two camps, that's where Al-Mahdi comes, that's where the great Malhama comes, that's the end of the world. And exactly the same narrative that you hear in the Shia and so many sects in the past, and in the extremist Christians. That's when Jesus descended, and you know, the Armageddon. But in a different scenarios, in a different evidence, in a different way you look at it. That's what it is.
So me and you, who fighting so hard to keep that gray area expanding and pushing these guys to the fringe, pushing them away, and keep the society in the middle, it doesn't need to be me versus you. It can be me and you. This narrative, me and you, it's not a narrative that is accepted by those groups. They want just me versus you. And unfortunately, we have so much in our heritage, in books and talks, especially in the tradition book, written in the time of war, where the world was basically in a state of war and split into two camps, and information and historical evidence and historical events that can be used to justify what they're doing today. But if you just step back and you look at the text, look at our Quran, how view humanity should be. جعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. We have made you nations. ولو شاء الله ما اختلفوا. If Allah wished, He wouldn't make us different. He would make us all one nation. ولولا دفع الله للناس بعضهم ببعض. If it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create us in different camps, struggles between people, that's what it is. We're not one type of people. And the point is, so should we live? وَاسْتَعْمَرَكُمْ فِيهَا. So you will be able to live in this land, and you will be able to make umran, basically build a civilization, live together in peace and harmony. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did this with actions when he went to Medina. He didn't say me versus them. He lived in Medina with multi-culture, multi-religion cities. That's why some of the people who write about the history of interfaith war, they said the first human being that we know of who talked about interfaith and the right of religious minorities, that he basically make it part of their constitution, was Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina. So this is, for me, one of the most important points that I want my community to be very aware of. That we don't allow anyone, no matter how, no matter in the left or on the right, in the extreme Muslims or in the extreme, basically, right or Islamophobes, we don't allow them to push us away from that gray area, from that middle path. And because of that work, those who make this work, they always targeted. Just ISIS put a list of churches in America. They want to target them in the Christmas. Why? Because these churches are basically targeting these churches will basically inflame the situation inside America, make the people pushed far away to that camp. Targeting imams in America. I was one of them included in that list. And many and other historians, Imam Yasser Qadi as well. Imam Umar Sulaiman in Dallas. And many activists in America. Why? Because they know that those people are the one who keeping that, basically the mainstream Muslims and the mainstream American in the middle. And the more you have those people, it basically contradicts their message. So I hope that this is something that you think about and you make sure that you contribute. That's why it is so important. If we want to counter the terrorism narrative or a terrorist narrative, is to be more visible in the society, more active, and make sure that this is based, they don't represent us. They don't have even a percentage to be said, but they are loud. And unfortunately, there is people feed off them, make news out of them, make money out of them. This is industry today, unfortunately. My time is up. But these are just a few thoughts that I want to share with you today about the issue of terrorism. And I will say, our community are not in a business of fighting terrorists. That's the FBI work. That's the police department work. That's the security agencies work. Our role is to fight the ideas, the views, the ideologies that lead to terrorism. Our role is to promote the tolerance, the understanding, the narrative that it will build a firewall inside our community against those who want to recruit from our community. Our role as a community is to make our community resilient, our community strong, can basically fight back this ideology. I said, no, I can't buy that narrative. That doesn't work for me. You know what? It makes our community willing to stand clearly, very loud, and we say, we be the first one to report a person who is going to do a damage to the society. We don't have a problem with that. That's our role as a community to do. In the same time, we should also put pressure on what making this terrorist group grow. But the problem, a lot of people said, Sheikh Waleed, why don't you talk about foreign policy? You know what, I know some of my colleagues, some speakers, they come and they hammer, you know, Iraq, Palestine, and make you say Allahu Akbar, Takbir, and you get so emotional and excited. I'm not kind of person to talk like that. I don't do that. I can easily play with your emotions if I want, but I don't do that. You know why? Because I know that if I do that, I'm just playing with your feelings. Because I know after your takbir and excitement and oh, mashallah, this sheikh is so madri ish, all, as we say, fashush, all like for nothing. Because you go empty after that. Maybe you feel good about yourself for a few seconds. Because in order for you to influence policies, you need numbers. You need money. Dr. Tariq, one of the most respected members of our community here, I will never forget, in his house, when we were trying to lobby for a congressman or somebody like for a position, somebody said his donation is $20. And you know what? If this $20, someone who don't have money, I will appreciate that. But someone who makes like a lot of money, $1 million, and he put $23 a check, you know what? That person, and after that you said, I want to influence the policies in Houston. No, Habibi. Money is the mother milk of politics. Remember this. Money is the mother milk for politics. So if we want, we need a lot of work to be able to influence, to change the foreign policy of our community. There's a long term. We're not even taking the steps toward that. That's why I don't do stuff like that. I'm talking about the thing that we can do together as a community, one step at a time. And we will, inshallah ta'ala, rise and we will be able to get that. I just came from the Islam in Spanish, and I'm so happy that we have that. Your Latino brothers and sisters make 33% of Texan today. 33, and they're going to be 44 soon. Thank you, Tex Dawah, for taking the initiative and supporting the Latino community. Because we are, as a community together, we'll be strong. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.